Beneath your feet lies an ancient language of urban design. The streets of your city hide sophisticated logic systems perfected by civilizations thousands of years ago. This video uncovers 24 hidden systems embedded in ancient roadways, from Roman military grids to Mayan astronomical pathways, revealing exactly why these designs still dictate the flow of our modern world. By the end, you will see every street corner and intersection through an entirely new lens, recognizing patterns that have guided human movement for millennia. How did sacred geometry determine the width of our grandest boulevards, and why do our suburban cul-de-sacs follow medieval defense strategies? What invisible blueprint from the past most strongly influences your own daily journey? The first of these hidden systems lies in the sacred geometry of processional routes. For ancient civilizations, a road was never just a path from one place to another. It was a line of power drawn across the earth. The Egyptians perfected this concept, engineering vast ceremonial avenues like the Avenue of Sphinxes in Luxor. This was not a random connection between temples. It was a meticulously calculated channel, aligned with the sun, the stars, and specific celestial events. The very dimensions of these roads, their width and length, were dictated by sacred mathematical ratios, patterns believed to resonate with the universe itself. The purpose was profound: to maintain harmony between the earthly and the spiritual, to allow divine energy to flow through the heart of the city and ensure cosmic order. This ancient logic of using axial alignments to create symbolic power did not vanish with the pharaohs. Look at the grand ceremonial core of Washington, D.C. The National Mall. Its long, unwavering vista from the Capitol to the Lincoln Memorial is a direct, if unconscious, echo of that Egyptian principle. It connects seats of power and memory, creating a sense of order and destiny not through mere convenience, but through a geometry that feels inherently significant. Our most important urban spaces still whisper the language of sacred pathways, built to inspire awe just as they were thousands of years ago. That same geometry of power found a more earthly application in the social blueprint of the city itself. A second hidden logic system governed ancient streets not by the stars, but by strict social hierarchy, a design for control woven into the very width of the pavement. In the meticulously planned cities of the Indus Valley, like Mohenjo-Daro and the grand capitals of ancient China, you find a clear, deliberate pattern: wide main boulevards, smaller secondary streets, and a tight web of narrow alleys. This was not an accident of urban growth, it was a tool of social engineering. The broad, clean thoroughfares were reserved for the elite, for soldiers, for grand processions, while the cramped, winding lanes confined the common population, controlling their movement and visibility. The design physically reinforced the class structure, ensuring everyone knew their place simply by the type of street they were permitted to walk upon. Nowhere is this principle more perfectly preserved than in Beijing's Forbidden City. Its entire layout is a masterclass in controlled access, a series of gates, courtyards, and pathways that grow progressively more exclusive. The wide central way was for the emperor alone, secondary routes for high officials, and hidden service lanes for everyone else, a physical manifestation of a social pyramid. And if you think this logic is a relic of empires past, look at the road outside your window. Our modern cities operate on an almost identical hierarchical system. We just use different words for it. We have high-speed freeways for long-distance travelers, wide arterial roads moving traffic across the city, collector streets funneling cars into neighborhoods, and finally, the small, slow local lanes where people actually live. The justification has shifted from royal decree to traffic efficiency, but the underlying principle of sorting and controlling human movement through layered pathways remains utterly unchanged. This ancient system of social organization is still directing your daily commute, proving that some of the oldest urban designs are the most persistent. But what happens when the straight lines of power and social order meet the chaos of conflict? A third hidden logic system emerged from the need for survival, the defensive curvilinear patterns of medieval Europe. The winding, seemingly chaotic streets of old towns were not a result of poor planning. They were a brilliant and deliberate military innovation. In a world of siege warfare and mounted knights, a straight, wide road was an invitation for an invading army to pour into the heart of a city. The solution was to design a maze. Narrow, twisting lanes created natural choke points, perfect for ambushes. They broke up the momentum of a cavalry charge, turning armored knights into confused, vulnerable targets in tight spaces. Every sharp corner was a potential killing zone, and every dead end a trap, while also providing a hidden network of escape routes for the town's defenders. The ancient fortified city of Carcassonne in France stands as a perfect, preserved example of this principle. From above, its street plan looks like a tangled skein of yarn, but on the ground, every curve, every sudden turn, and every narrow passageway served a clear, calculated defensive purpose, making the city a nightmare for any attacker to navigate under a hail of arrows and stones. And this ancient logic of defense did not disappear with the advent of cannons. It simply evolved. Take a look at a modern suburban neighborhood map. What do you see? Winding roads, cul-de-sacs, and loops that deliberately prevent straight-line movement. The justification today is traffic calming and safety for children, but the underlying geometric principle is identical to that of medieval Carcassonne. These designs create controlled access points, limit through traffic, and turn residential areas into defensible zones, not against knights with swords, but against the constant flow of anonymous vehicles. The security concerns have changed, but our instinct to design protective, confusing pathways for our homes is a direct inheritance from those ancient fortress towns. While medieval towns twisted their streets for defense, other ancient cities faced a far more relentless enemy, water. The fourth hidden logic system transformed roadways from mere paths into sophisticated hydrological engines, masterpieces of water management. In the floodplains of Mesopotamia, along the Indus River Valley, and across the Roman Empire, engineers designed entire cities with streets that were not just for travel, but for the vital movement of water itself. They understood that a road's surface was a catchment area, and they sculpted it with purpose. Roman roads were not flat, they were cleverly cambered, arched like a turtle's back so that rainwater would run off the sides into deep drainage ditches. These ditches then acted as small canals, channeling the water away from the city to prevent flooding, or sometimes directing it toward nearby agricultural fields. The famous Cloaca Maxima in Rome began as one such open drainage channel, so critical to the city's survival that its path ultimately dictated the layout of streets and buildings for centuries, a hidden river of logic flowing beneath the feet of citizens. Far across the world, the Maya employed a similar principle, elevating their ceremonial causeways so that during the torrential rainy seasons, these stone pathways doubled as aqueducts, guiding precious water across the landscape. The street itself was a tool for survival, a response to an environmental challenge. And this ancient logic is not some forgotten relic. It is flowing directly beneath your car tires right now. Modern storm drains, the gutters on every curb, the vast underground networks of pipes that whisk rainwater away, these are our version of the Roman drainage ditch. Our urban planners still use the gradient and crown of a road to control water, a seamless continuation of a system perfected thousands of years ago to keep a city dry and functional. While ancient engineers battled water and invaders, others engaged in a quieter struggle against the climate itself. The fifth hidden logic system turned entire cities into passive solar collectors, using street orientation as a precise tool for climate control. In the sun-drenched cities of ancient Greece and Rome, urban planners were master astronomers of daily life. They laid out their gridiron plans not just for order, but to harness the sun's predictable path across the sky. Look at the ruins of Priene or Miletus, where the orderly streets run east-west. This was no random choice. This specific orientation meant that the long sides of city blocks and the houses upon them faced south. During the short, cold days of winter, the low-hanging sun would pour its warmth directly into the homes. But in the scorching summer, when the sun rode high overhead at noon, the same buildings would be protected by their own roofs, casting deep, cooling shade over the interiors and the streets below. The Romans perfected this further with their massive apartment blocks, the insulae. These buildings were deliberately positioned along streets whose angles were calculated to the degree, ensuring every dwelling captured the maximum possible sunlight for warmth and light during the key winter months. They built comfort directly into the urban fabric, creating naturally temperate living conditions centuries before the invention of furnaces or air conditioners. This ancient wisdom was largely forgotten in the age of cheap energy, but today it is making a powerful comeback. Modern sustainable architects and planners are rediscovering these solar orientation techniques with a newfound urgency. The principles of passive house design and entire eco-districts are, at their core, a return to this ancient logic. They once again position buildings and lay out streets to work with the sun, drastically reducing the need for mechanical heating and cooling. The very challenges we face today with energy consumption and climate change were being solved millennia ago, not with complex technology, but with intelligent design. What other ancient solutions to modern problems are hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to rediscover their simple, elegant power? The sun-drenched logic of climate control gave way to a more pragmatic blueprint, one written in the language of commerce and goods. A sixth hidden system, economic zoning through transportation networks, emerged to organize the chaotic energy of trade into a predictable, profitable order. Ancient cities along the Silk Road were masters of this design, creating distinct urban zones for commerce, industry, and living, all connected by a web of roads engineered for economic efficiency. The flow of camels and carts was as important as the flow of water or sunlight. Perhaps the most brilliant example was the circular design of ancient Baghdad. Its perfect round form was not just an architectural marvel, it was a radial economic engine. Major roads spoked out from the center, each one naturally funneling specific types of goods and people into dedicated sectors of the city. This created a clear separation, keeping noisy, smoky workshops away from quiet residential quarters and grand administrative centers, all while ensuring that everything remained connected to the central markets. It was a city designed like a wheel, with commerce as its axle. In medieval Europe, this logic became even more granular. The entire layout of a town like Winchester or Bruges was an economic map. The main market square was always positioned at the most critical road intersection, the heart of the urban body. From this hub, specialized streets branched off, each one dedicated to a single trade. You would walk down Butcher's Lane, Baker's Street, and Metalworkers' Row, where the very name of the road dictated its economic function. This clustering was not accidental. It created efficiencies of scale, concentrated competition, and made it easy for customers and suppliers to find what they needed. The design of the street itself facilitated the trade, with wide areas for carts to unload and ground floor workshops opening directly onto the pavement. This ancient system of sorting a city by economic function is so deeply embedded in our modern world that we rarely even question it. Our zoning laws, which legally separate industrial parks, commercial shopping districts, and residential suburbs, are a direct continuation of this millennia-old practice. We may not have a street named for candle makers anymore, but we have an entire district for technology companies, another for big box retailers, and another for financial headquarters. The justification has been updated with modern ideas about pollution and property values, but the underlying principle of organizing a city by economic activity and using the transportation network to connect these specialized zones is a direct inheritance from Baghdad's Round City and the merchant lanes of medieval Europe. Our modern commute from a home in one zone to a job in another is guided by an economic logic that was perfected when goods traveled by camel and cart. The logic of commerce gave way to a far grander design, one that connected the city not just to markets, but to the cosmos itself. A seventh hidden system used roadways as vast astronomical instruments, transforming entire cities into stone calendars that track the rhythms of the universe. Pre-Columbian civilizations like the Maya and the Inca were masters of this celestial engineering. Their long, straight ceremonial roads, known as Sacbeob, were far more than simple connectors between temples. These white limestone pathways were carefully aligned with the sun, the moon, and the stars. A journey down a Sacbe was not just a physical movement, it was a passage through time, marking the precise points of the solstices and equinoxes, and even the movements of planets like Venus. The road itself was a pointer, its unwavering line telling people exactly when to plant, when to harvest, and when to conduct the most important rituals. This cosmic consciousness reached its zenith at Teotihuacan, the city of the gods. Its central axis, the Street of the Dead, is not aligned to true north, but instead points directly toward the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster. For the builders, this was not a trivial detail, it was the foundation of their entire world. The rise and set of this star group marked critical cycles of time and agriculture, and by embedding that alignment into the city's primary avenue, they integrated the cosmos into the daily life of every single citizen. To walk that street was to participate in a celestial order. While our modern cities rarely plan streets to track star clusters, the impulse to connect our urban world to the heavens has not completely vanished. Look at the plan of Brasilia, a city conceived in the 20th century. Its overall layout is famously described as a bird or an airplane, but it is also a deliberate cosmic diagram. Its monumental axis and the positioning of its key government buildings are aligned with the sunrise on the day of the city's foundation, a symbolic gesture that echoes the ancient desire to root a place in the cosmos. We may have replaced stone observatories with satellites, but the human need to see our own story reflected in the stars and to build that connection into the very paths we walk remains a powerful, if often hidden, legacy of these ancient sky watchers. The cosmos was not the only invisible force that ancient engineers sought to channel through their streets. They understood that sound itself could be shaped and directed by urban design, creating an eighth hidden logic system of acoustic engineering for communication. Long before the invention of the microphone, Greek and Roman architects were masters of sonic manipulation. Their open-air theaters carved into hillsides are famous for their perfect acoustics, but this principle extended far beyond the stage. They designed public spaces and processional routes to function as vast amplifiers. A speaker in the Roman Forum, standing at a specific spot, could project their voice to a crowd of thousands, the surrounding architecture and street geometry acting as a natural sound bowl to focus and carry every word. This understanding is preserved in structures like the Temple of Hephaestus in Athens, where whispers can travel clearly from one end of the portico to the other, a phenomenon we now call a whispering gallery. This was not a magical accident, it was applied physics, a deliberate design to ensure that proclamations, prayers, and performances reached every listener with stunning clarity. This logic of sound control became a matter of survival in the cramped, fortified towns of medieval Europe. There, the chaotic jumble of narrow, winding streets served a crucial acoustic purpose. The tall, closely packed buildings acted as natural sound channels, creating canyon-like effects that could carry the peal of a church bell or the shout of a watchman from the central watchtower to the farthest corner of the settlement. This network of stone and space was an early warning system, turning the entire town into a giant ear that could detect and disseminate urgent information in an instant. The specific layout of those streets directly influenced how quickly and clearly a sound would travel, making acoustic design a fundamental part of urban defense and social cohesion. We may think we have moved beyond such primitive sound systems, but the ancient principles are still resonating all around us. Modern sports stadiums are direct descendants of the Greek amphitheater, their curved bowls meticulously engineered to capture and reflect crowd noise and amplified sound. The public address systems in train stations and airports follow the same foundational goal: to deliver a clear message to a dispersed public. The key difference is that we now use electronic amplifiers to achieve what ancient builders accomplished with stone, angle, and an intimate understanding of how sound moves through space. Our solutions are technological, but the underlying challenge of being heard in a crowded world remains the same, and the blueprints for solving it were drafted in marble and cobblestone millennia ago. The sound of a city was only one layer of its hidden language. Equally powerful was the silent script written for the human mind, a ninth logic system that choreographed perception itself through psychological wayfinding. Ancient builders understood that a journey was more than a physical transition. It was a story, and they designed the path to be the narrator. From the sacred pilgrim routes of Japan to the processional ways of ancient Greece, pathways were carefully engineered to unfold in a deliberate sequence of landmarks, creating a powerful buildup of anticipation and meaning. The approach to Machu Picchu along the Inca Trail is a masterclass in this psychological design. The entire multi-day trek is not a random walk through the mountains, it is a carefully staged revelation. The path leads travelers through ever-changing ecosystems and past lesser ruins, building a sense of progression and mystery before culminating in the ultimate payoff, the final ascent to the Sun Gate. At that precise moment, the entire citadel is revealed in a single, breathtaking vista below, a calculated visual explosion after miles of constrained views. This was not an accident of topography, it was intentional theater, an emotional crescendo engineered into stone and earth to maximize the spiritual and emotional impact of arrival. Medieval European cathedrals employed a similar psychological compression and release. The streets leading to a great church like Notre Dame in Paris were deliberately narrow, winding, and crowded with buildings, creating a sense of confinement and focusing the pilgrim's attention forward. Then, suddenly, the path would open into a vast plaza, and the full, towering majesty of the cathedral would erupt into view, overwhelming the senses and inspiring a profound feeling of awe and humility. The architecture of the approach was designed to make the sacred space feel like a divine intervention. We have not lost this ancient understanding of the sequenced journey, we have simply repurposed it. Walk through any major modern theme park, and you are walking a path designed by the same psychological principles. The approach to Cinderella's castle at Disney World is a perfect example, with carefully framed views, winding paths that hide the full spectacle, and a final, glorious reveal designed to elicit wonder. The ceremonial approach to a courthouse or a capitol building, with its grand stairs and axial vista, works on the exact same principle, using sequenced spatial experience to build a sense of gravity and importance. These are not new ideas, they are the rediscovery of an ancient truth that the path itself and the order in which we see things can be engineered to tell a story and evoke a specific emotional response, proving that the oldest maps were not just of the land but of the human mind. That psychological journey was a luxury afforded by time and custom, but for an empire expanding at a relentless pace, a different logic was required, one of pure, efficient replication. The 10th hidden system is modular construction for rapid expansion, a blueprint perfected by the Roman legions. Wherever they marched, from the misty hills of Britain to the deserts of North Africa, Roman engineers laid down new settlements with astonishing speed, and they did it by using a standardized road template. Every military camp or castrum followed an identical plan built around two central perpendicular roads. The Cardo, running north-south, and the Decumanus, running east-west, formed the absolute backbone of the new town. This was not just a matter of convenience, it was a system of instant urbanization. The moment these two main roads were staked into the ground, the entire future of the settlement was predetermined. The forum would go at their intersection. The public baths, the temple, the commander's headquarters, all had their pre-assigned plots relative to this central cross. The remaining streets were then laid out in a perfect gridiron pattern, creating uniform city blocks. This modular approach meant that a soldier from Gaul, arriving at a newly built fort in Syria, would already know his way around. He would know exactly where to find the granary, the infirmary, and the main gates, because the logic of the streets was universal across the empire. It was a brilliant fusion of rigid order and flexible adaptation. The template was always the same, but it could be scaled up or down, or slightly skewed to accommodate a local river or a hill, all while maintaining the core imperial standard. This logic of modular, repeatable urban forms did not end with the fall of Rome. Look from the sky at any modern suburban development or a large planned community. What you see is the direct descendant of the Roman castrum. Instead of a Cardo and Decumanus, we have a central collector road and a main arterial. Instead of a predetermined forum, we have a pre-planned shopping center or a community park, always positioned at a key intersection within the street network. The houses themselves are built on standardized lots, repeating the same handful of designs, creating an instantly familiar, if sometimes monotonous, landscape. The justification is the same: speed, efficiency, and cost-effective construction. The Roman system for planting cities across conquered territories has evolved into our system for planting neighborhoods across open fields, proving that the logic of rapid, reproducible urban form is one of the most enduring and practical legacies of the ancient world. While the Romans built with modular efficiency, other civilizations saw the land itself as a living, breathing entity to be harmonized with, not conquered. An 11th hidden logic system, geomancy and symbolic patterns, used roadways to weave cities into the very fabric of the cosmos and the earth. In ancient China, the practice of feng shui governed the layout of entire capitals, transforming them into vast cosmic diagrams. The magnificent city of Chang'an, for centuries the capital of the empire, was a perfect expression of this principle. Its grid of streets was not merely a practical arrangement, it was a symbolic map of the heavens. The orientation of the main avenues, the placement of gates, and the alignment of important buildings were all calculated according to the 8 trigrams of the I Ching, the ancient book of changes. This was a system designed to channel the flow of beneficial energy, or Kai, ensuring health, prosperity, and cosmic balance for the entire nation. A road was not just a path for people, it was a channel for invisible terrestrial and celestial forces, and its correct alignment was as vital to the city's survival as its defensive walls or water supply. The logic was clear: human well-being was inseparable from the health of the natural and cosmic environment. While modern urban planning rarely consults the I Ching, the fundamental human need that drove these geomantic practices is more relevant than ever. The ancient concern for harmony between the built environment and natural forces has not disappeared. It has simply been translated into a new language. Today's movements in sustainable design and biophilic urbanism are, in many ways, the scientific descendants of Feng Shui. The deliberate orientation of buildings to maximize natural light and minimize energy use, the creation of green corridors to facilitate the movement of wildlife and clean air through a city, the careful preservation of natural landforms like hills and waterways within urban development, all of these modern practices echo the ancient geomantic goal. They seek to create a balanced, healthy relationship between human habitation and the natural world. We have replaced the concept of Kai with metrics for air quality and thermal comfort, but the underlying impulse is the same: to build cities that do not fight against nature but work in concert with it. This ancient symbolic system addressed a fundamental human need for connection, a need we are now, with our advanced technology, finally learning to value again on a planetary scale. The precise measurement of a pathway could orchestrate time itself. A 12th hidden logic system governed ancient cities, where the distances between points on a ceremonial route were not arbitrary, but carefully calculated to control the rhythm of ritual. This was processional timing through measured distances, a form of temporal engineering built directly into the urban landscape. In the sprawling temple complexes of ancient Egypt, the long avenues connecting sanctuaries were punctuated by stations or waypoints. The space between these stations was not measured for the convenience of walking, but for the duration of specific prayers, chants, or symbolic acts that had to be completed during the journey. The entire procession became a moving clock, its ticks and tocks marked by the arrival at each predetermined point, synchronizing human activity with the sacred order of the ceremony. The Romans perfected this for public spectacle along the Via Sacra. This sacred road winding through the Forum was not a straight line by accident. Its gentle curves and the specific distances between temples, altars, and monuments created natural pauses. These pauses were precisely timed for sacrifices, offerings, or political proclamations, ensuring the grand triumphal parade of a returning general unfolded with the dramatic pacing of a well-scripted play, building public excitement to a calculated climax at the Temple of Jupiter. Across the ocean, the Maya engineered their stone causeways with the same temporal precision. Archaeologists have found that the marker stones placed along these white roads often correspond to important calendrical cycles. The distance between two major points might represent a key number of days in the Maya calendar, turning a physical journey into a reenactment of a cosmic cycle. To walk the Sacbeob was to walk through time, with each step a tangible connection to the rhythms of the universe, from the agricultural year to the complex movements of Venus. This ancient logic of embedding time into space is so intuitive that we have never really abandoned it. Look at any modern parade route, like the one for Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York City. The route is meticulously planned, but the planning is not just about the path from point A to point B. the organizers carefully consider the location of grandstands, television camera positions, and performance zones. These act as modern-day ritual stations, creating natural pauses for a float to stop and perform, for a band to play, or for a celebrity to wave, controlling the pace and spectacle of the event for both the live audience and those watching at home. Even the design of a university campus, with its carefully spaced quads and buildings, encourages a walking pace that allows for a mental transition between classes, a subtle timing mechanism built into the distances we walk every day. The ancient architects understood that space and time are inextricably linked, and by designing one, they could master the other, a principle that still dictates the tempo of our most important public ceremonies. Even the most complex choreography of movement has ancient roots. A 13th hidden logic system mastered the flow of different travelers through multi-level circulation, a design that kept pedestrians, animals, and vehicles from colliding in the crowded arteries of the ancient world. In the rock-carved city of Petra, the main entry path, the Sick, is a deep, narrow canyon. But look closer at the stone walls and you will see carved channels and terracotta pipes running alongside the main passage. This was a separate, dedicated water conduit, freeing the primary roadway for camels, carts, and foot traffic, ensuring a vital resource did not compete with commercial movement. Similarly, in the underground cities of Cappadocia, an incredible feat of engineering created distinct vertical layers for different functions. Narrow, twisting staircases connected levels, while wider, sloping tunnels were reserved for moving goods and livestock, creating a three-dimensional street network that separated fast and slow, sacred and mundane in a complex vertical dance. The Romans brought this logic to their paved city streets, installing raised sidewalks and ingenious stepping stones. These stone blocks, spaced at regular intervals across muddy or flooded roadways, were not just for keeping feet dry. They were a physical, permanent demarcation, creating a safe pedestrian zone elevated above the relentless flow of carts and chariots. The gaps between the stones were precisely calibrated to allow cartwheels to pass through unimpeded, a perfect example of simultaneous, conflict-free movement engineered into the very pavement. We are now, centuries later, relearning this ancient wisdom out of sheer necessity. The modern push for separated bike lanes, car-free pedestrian plazas, and multi-level transit corridors is a direct echo of Petra's water channels and Rome's stepping stones. We are once again designing streets not as single-purpose ribbons of asphalt, but as complex, multi-layered systems that acknowledge different speeds and different purposes. A dedicated bus lane is the modern equivalent of a Roman ceremonial route, prioritizing a specific type of movement for the greater efficiency of the whole city. The fundamental challenge of safely mixing pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles in a limited space was solved long ago, and we are simply rediscovering the blueprints, proving that the most forward-thinking urban designs are often the oldest ones revisited. A road can be a bridge, but it can also become a wall. The 14th hidden logic system reveals that ancient pathways were often designed as explicit boundaries, defining territory and separating spheres of authority. In ancient Rome, this concept was enshrined in the Pomerium, a sacred and legal boundary that encircled the city. This line was not marked by a fence, but by stones and the roads themselves. Crossing this boundary meant moving from civilian law to military authority. A general could not command his legions within the Pomerium, and soldiers were forbidden to enter, a profound separation of powers physically etched into the urban landscape by the very routes people traveled every day. This was a road that divided more than land, it divided entire systems of governance. Medieval towns adopted a more defensive version of this same principle. Their ring roads, running just inside or outside the protective walls, created a clear and undeniable edge. This was the limit of urban life, the point where the crowded, regulated world of the town gave way to the open, often lawless countryside. The road itself, often a wide circuit to allow for the movement of soldiers and supplies along the ramparts, was the ultimate territorial marker, controlling not just who came in, but what the city itself was. And this ancient logic of using transportation routes to define space is embedded in the map of your own city. Look closely at a municipal map. You will almost certainly find that major roads, highways, and rivers are used as the boundaries for school districts, voting wards, and zoning classifications. That 4-lane arterial road near your home is not just a conduit for cars. It is likely the invisible line separating one neighborhood from another, one tax district from the next, one community's identity from its neighbors. We have preserved the ancient function of the road as a divider, using the same infrastructure that connects us to also carefully, and often permanently, carve up our world. While streets defined territory and movement, they also mastered the invisible currents of air. The 15th hidden logic system harnessed the physics of the urban canyon for thermal regulation, a brilliant form of passive climate control perfected in the ancient cities of the Middle East. In the searing heat of North Africa and the Persian Gulf, the chaotic jumble of a traditional Medina was not a sign of disorder, but a meticulously calibrated machine for staying cool. The narrow, winding streets were not random. Their width, orientation, and the height of the buildings lining them were all part of a precise calculation. These deep, shadowed canyons created a world of perpetual shade, where the sun's direct rays could only penetrate for a few hours each day. The towering, closely spaced walls absorbed the cool of the night and radiated it back throughout the day, while the winding paths acted as wind tunnels, capturing the faintest breeze and funneling it through the city with increased velocity. This was architecture working with the environment, not against it, creating a comfortable microclimate where the temperature could be many degrees cooler than in the surrounding open desert. The genius of this system reached its peak in Persian cities with the integration of the badger or wind catcher. These magnificent towers rising above the rooftops were not mere decoration. They were sophisticated air pumps. A badger would capture the cooler, faster-moving winds high above the ground and funnel them down into the heart of a building, often directing the airflow across a pool of water or a subterranean chamber to further cool and humidify the air. Simultaneously, the design would create a pressure differential that pulled the hot, stale air up and out of the structure. This entire process was powered by nature itself, with the street layout below serving as the critical intake and exhaust network, channeling the very breezes the wind catchers needed to function. For centuries, we abandoned this elegant wisdom in favor of mechanical air conditioning, but the principles are making a powerful and necessary comeback. Modern architects designing for extreme heat are now looking back to the Medina for inspiration. They are deliberately creating narrow pedestrian passages, using shading devices and strategically placed water features to cool the air, and designing buildings with central atriums that function like modern badgers, promoting natural stack ventilation. The ancient logic of thermal regulation through urban form, born from a necessity to survive in harsh climates, is now being rediscovered as a vital key to reducing our massive energy consumption. It turns out that the most sustainable path forward was paved thousands of years ago with cool, shaded stone. But the choreography of power was never more explicit than in the city's grandest performances. A 16th hidden logic system transformed entire avenues into stages for political theater, where the script was written in stone and the actors were emperors and gods. Ancient processional routes like the Via Triumphalis in Rome were not simple paths of celebration. They were meticulously engineered propaganda machines. The entire journey was a carefully staged narrative of victory and dominance. A returning general, granted the rare honor of a triumph, would not take a direct route into the city. Instead, his procession followed a long, winding path that snaked through Rome, a path deliberately chosen to pass by the most important temples, circuses, and public spaces. This route was punctuated by triumphal arches, not merely as decorations, but as monumental stage props that framed the conquering hero for the adoring crowds. The road itself was designed with strategic viewpoints and grandstands, ensuring that the maximum number of citizens could witness the spectacle of captured treasure, exotic animals, and chained prisoners of war. Every step of the way was calculated to reinforce a single, overwhelming message: the absolute and divinely sanctioned power of Rome and its leader. Across the Atlantic, the Aztecs employed a similar logic with their ceremonial causeways. These long, raised stone pathways across the waters of Lake Texcoco did more than connect the island city of Tenochtitlan to the mainland. They created a dramatic, linear approach to the towering Templo Mayor. As a priest or emperor processed along this causeway, they would appear to rise from the water, approaching the sacred temple pyramid in a slow, awe-inspiring ascent that visibly demonstrated their connection to the celestial forces. The journey was the message, a physical manifestation of their authority rising from the earthly realm to the divine. This ancient understanding of movement as a political tool is not a relic of the past. Look at the carefully planned route of a modern presidential inauguration parade in Washington, D.C. It is never a random walk. It moves with precision down Pennsylvania Avenue from the Capitol to the White House, a symbolic transfer of power witnessed by the nation. The path is lined with specific, politically significant buildings, and the entire event is broadcast from strategic camera positions designed to maximize the visual impact of the new leader. Our state funerals with their somber, measured pace along predetermined avenues and our victory parades for sports teams all follow this same ancient blueprint. They use the city as a backdrop and the street as a stage, proving that the choreography of political spectacle, perfected by emperors and priests, remains a fundamental language of power in our own time. A road could also be a farm. The 17th hidden logic system wove food production directly into the urban fabric through integrated agricultural networks. In the heart of the Khmer Empire, the vast temple complex of Angkor Wat was the centerpiece of a metropolis engineered for life. Its magnificent causeways and processional roads were masterpieces of dual purpose, functioning as both sacred pathways and critical components of a massive hydraulic system. During the dry season, these stone avenues carried pilgrims and priests, but when the monsoons arrived, they transformed. The roads themselves became the raised banks of canals, their elevated surfaces guiding the precious floodwaters into an intricate grid of reservoirs and rice fields. The very infrastructure of movement was also the infrastructure of survival, a single, elegant solution for transport, water management, and agriculture that sustained one of the world's largest pre-industrial cities. This principle of multifunctional infrastructure was a global phenomenon. Across the world, the Roman via were not isolated ribbons of stone. They were the veins of the empire's economic body, connecting vast agricultural estates, the latifundia, directly to the markets of bustling cities. But their function did not stop at moving grain and olive oil. The same careful camber that shed rainwater from the road surface also directed it into roadside ditches that irrigated adjacent fields, while the road itself often served as the legal boundary marker for those various states. A single Roman road was simultaneously a transportation corridor, a drainage system, an irrigation channel, and a property line, a holistic tool that organized the entire landscape for productivity. This ancient, integrated wisdom stands in stark contrast to the segregated systems of our modern world, where highways slice through farmland with no functional connection to it, and food is shipped across continents in sealed containers. Yet, a quiet revolution is seeking to reconnect these severed threads. The modern movements for urban agriculture and local food systems are, in essence, a rediscovery of this Khmer and Roman logic. Concepts like food hubs located along transit corridors, the use of greenways for both recreation and local food distribution, and even the vision of edible landscapes along city streets all point toward a renewed understanding. We are beginning to see that the path from farm to table does not have to be an invisible, globalized supply chain. It can be a visible, multifunctional network woven back into the community, just as it was when a road was also a canal and a property line, proving that the most resilient designs are those that serve more than a single purpose. Even the most stable ground can betray a city with sudden, violent movement. An 18th hidden logic system reveals how ancient builders engineered their roadways to survive the Earth itself, a masterclass in seismic resilience through flexible foundations. In earthquake-prone regions like the Roman Empire and the Andes Mountains, engineers understood that rigidity meant total destruction. Their solution was brilliant in its simplicity. They designed roads and structures to move, to absorb the shock, and to settle back into place when the shaking stopped. Roman engineers, building across unstable lands in Greece and Anatolia, constructed their famous roads not as a single slab of stone, but as a multi-layered sandwich. Deep foundations of large stones were topped with layers of smaller gravel and sand, all bound together with mortar. This complex structure was not just for durability, it acted as a shock absorber. During an earthquake, the individual layers could shift and slide against each other, dissipating the violent energy laterally across the roadbed, rather than allowing it to concentrate and shatter the entire pavement. This meant that even as buildings collapsed around it, the vital transportation link, the road, often remained passable, enabling the crucial flow of soldiers, supplies, and information for rescue and recovery. The Inca took this principle of flexibility to an even higher level of artistry with their ashlar masonry. Their structures and the pathways that connected them were built with stones cut so precisely that a razor blade could not fit between them. Yet this was not a rigid, Loctite construction. The stones were slightly trapezoidal and interlocked in a way that allowed for microscopic movement. During a tremor, the entire wall or roadway would sway and dance, the stones clicking and shifting against one another, only to settle perfectly back into their original alignment once the earthquake's energy was spent. The structure was alive, breathing with the mountain rather than fighting against it. This ancient understanding of designing for movement rather than against it is a cornerstone of our most advanced modern engineering. Today's seismic designs for bridges and elevated highways are the direct technological descendants of those Roman gravel beds and Inca stone dances. We now use massive shock absorbers called dampers, flexible expansion joints, and even bases that allow pillars to rock back and forth, all with the same fundamental goal: to let the structure sway safely so it does not break. The materials have changed from carved granite to specialized steel and polymers, but the underlying logic is identical: an acceptance that the earth will move, and a design that accommodates that movement to ensure the network of life endures. Numbers themselves became a hidden language of the city. A 19th logic system wove sacred numerology directly into the street grid, transforming urban plans into cosmic diagrams of harmony. Ancient Chinese capital cities, like the magnificent Chang'an, were often modeled on the 3x3 magic square, a grid where every row, column, and diagonal adds up to the same number. This was not a mathematical curiosity, it was a profound symbolic map. The city's outer walls formed the square, while the 8 main gates and the central imperial precinct mirrored the square's 8 outer numbers and its central, unifying core. This layout was believed to stabilize the empire, connecting the earthly capital to the perfect, balanced order of the heavens. In a similar vein, Hindu temple cities across India were laid out as vast mandalas, intricate circular and square patterns representing the universe. The streets radiated out from a central temple in precise concentric rings, with a number of pathways and their intersections corresponding to sacred numerical sequences from Vedic texts. Each number held meaning related to deities, cosmic cycles, or states of consciousness. To walk these streets was to traverse a spiritual map, with every turn and crossing point imbued with symbolic significance. Even the philosophical ideal, as described by Plato, was a city built upon specific numerical proportions. Ratios he believed echoed the very structure of the cosmos and the harmonious soul. For these civilizations, the correct number was as crucial as the strongest foundation stone, because it wove an invisible architecture of meaning into the daily life of the city. While modern urban planning has largely abandoned mystical numerology in favor of traffic flow metrics and zoning codes, that deep-seated human craving for meaningful patterns has not vanished. It simply finds new expression. Our appreciation for a beautifully geometric city plan, like the radiating circles of Washington, D.C. streets or the satisfying symmetry of a grand public square, taps into that same ancient need. We may no longer believe that a specific number of streets guarantees cosmic balance, but we are still drawn to urban designs that feel orderly, balanced, and intentional on a level that transcends pure function. This reveals that some of the oldest logic systems were not just about organizing space, but about feeding the human spirit's hunger for a world that makes sense, a desire as powerful today as it was millennia ago. Ancient architects understood that a true journey was never just a visual spectacle, it was a full-body immersion. The 20th hidden logic system engineered multi-sensory experience design into the very fabric of sacred pathways, choreographing sound, smell, and touch to guide the spirit. As you approached a Greek healing sanctuary like the one at Epidaurus, your ears would be the first to receive the message. Long before the temple came into view, you would hear the gentle, constant trickle of water from fountains and sacred springs, a sound believed to purify the mind. Musicians stationed at strategic points along the ascent would fill the air with melodies from lyres and flutes, their music growing clearer and more complex as you neared the inner sanctum, building a sonic crescendo that prepared you for the divine. This was environmental storytelling written in vibration and tone. Buddhist pilgrimage routes in Japan took this further, deliberately engaging the sense of touch. The stone paths leading to mountain temples like those at Koyasan were often laid with different materials, rough river rocks giving way to smooth, worn flagstones, then to soft, fragrant cedar planks. Each change in texture underfoot signaled a new stage of the pilgrimage, a tactile reminder of the pilgrim's progress from the mundane world toward enlightenment. The routes were also lined with specific trees and flowering shrubs, like cherry and plum blossoms, whose seasonal scents created an aromatic map that changed with the time of year, weaving the very passage of time into the sensory experience. The Romans, masters of urban spectacle, applied this logic to their city streets. Walking from the bustling forum into a quieter residential district, you would experience a deliberate shift in sensory input. The cacophony of merchants and carts would fade, replaced by the gentle splash of water from neighborhood fountains. The rough volcanic stone of the main streets would transition to more ornate, polished marble underfoot as you passed the home of a wealthy patrician, while the air might carry the scent of baking bread from a nearby bakery or incense from a household shrine. Every material, every sound, and every smell was a carefully considered part of the street's identity. This ancient wisdom, which created such deeply resonant and memorable places, was largely lost in the 20th century's focus on pure visual aesthetics and automotive efficiency. But today, a powerful movement in contemporary placemaking is rediscovering these principles. Architects now consciously design for soundscapes, incorporating water features to mask traffic noise and selecting paving materials that create a pleasant acoustic environment. They plant gardens for their scent and texture and design pathways with varied surfaces to engage walkers more fully. The goal is no longer just to create a space that looks good in a photograph, but to craft a holistic, multi-sensory experience that makes people feel connected, calm, and truly present. Our most successful modern public spaces, from a quiet urban park to a vibrant market square, succeed precisely because they speak this ancient, multi-sensory language, proving that to design for the human experience is to design for all the senses at once. Our most efficient highways follow trails blazed by merchants thousands of years ago. The 21st hidden logic system is trade route optimization through natural corridors, a masterful collaboration between human ambition and the lay of the land. Ancient traders did not simply charge across the landscape in straight lines. They developed a profound, accumulated understanding of geography, learning to read the earth for its paths of least resistance. They identified the gentle slopes of river valleys that offered flat, well-watered passage. They sought out the precise mountain passes that remained open longest during harsh winters, and they hugged coastlines that provided predictable winds and access to ports. The sprawling Silk Road was not a single paved highway, but a fluid, living network of countless such paths, each one representing centuries of hard-won knowledge about seasonal conditions, bandit threats, local rulers, and the locations of the most lucrative markets. This was a system built on collective intelligence, where the success of a caravan depended on choosing the optimal corridor from a web of possibilities. The Romans, pragmatic empire builders that they were, understood this embedded wisdom perfectly. When their legions advanced, their engineers did not always impose a new, rigid grid. Instead, they often systematically improved the existing trade routes they found, paving over the ancient dirt tracks that generations of local traders had already proven were the most efficient paths through the terrain. They recognized that these traditional pathways held a deep geographical logic, refined by countless journeys and failures. The Roman road was frequently just the final, polished version of a route that had been walked for 1,000 years. This ancient, optimized selection process is literally paved over, yet it continues to guide our largest infrastructure projects. If you trace the path of a modern interstate highway through a mountain range, or plot the course of a major railway line across a continent, you will often find it running directly alongside or even on top of an ancient trade corridor like the Silk Road. Our engineers, with all their satellites and geological surveys, consistently arrive at the same conclusions as those ancient merchants with their camels and carts. The fundamental logic of moving efficiently through a landscape, of finding the path that balances distance, gradient, and safety, has not changed. The vehicles are faster and the cargo is different, but the optimal path through the mountains was discovered millennia ago, a permanent seam in the fabric of the earth that we are still following today. A city's most vital function is not just to move people, but to connect them. The 22nd hidden logic system reveals how ancient planners deliberately engineered social interaction into the very intersections of their road networks, creating spaces where community could flourish. The heart of any Greek city was its agora, and its placement was never accidental. It was always situated at the convergence of the city's most important roads, a central hub where every journey could potentially become a social encounter. This was not an empty plaza, but a carefully equipped environment designed to make people linger. Shade from colonnades offered relief from the sun, public fountains provided fresh water, and stone benches invited conversation. Surrounding shops and food stalls created a constant hum of commercial and social activity, ensuring that the space between destinations became a destination in itself. The Roman Forum perfected this concept, integrating it into the rigid grid of the Cardo and Decumanus. The Forum was the literal crossroads of civic life, a multi-purpose square where politics, commerce, and religion collided, all made possible by its strategic position within the transportation network. This wisdom was not lost in the winding streets of medieval Europe. Where several narrow lanes met, the buildings would often step back, creating a small, irregularly shaped public square. This neighborhood node, often featuring a well, a tree, or a market cross, became the living room of the community. It was a place to draw water, to hear news, to let children play under watchful eyes, and to simply see and be seen by one's neighbors. The design forced a pause in the daily journey, transforming a mere intersection into the epicenter of local social life. Our modern world, for all its digital connectivity, is now desperately trying to recapture this ancient magic. The entire concept of a third place, a social environment separate from home and work, is a direct echo of the Greek agora. When urban planners today install public seating, pop-up parks, food truck zones, and pedestrianized streets, they are applying the same fundamental principles, using design to encourage the spontaneous, unplanned interactions that are the lifeblood of a community. We are slowly relearning that a street is not just a conduit for traffic, but the potential stage for human connection, a truth that was set in stone at the crossroads of ancient cities. A road could be the difference between holding an empire together and watching it shatter into fragments. The 23rd Hidden Logic System reveals how ancient pathways were engineered as weapons of war, designed not for commerce or ceremony, but for the rapid deployment of military force. Roman military engineers were the masters of this strategic art. Their legendary road network, stretching over 80,000 kilometers, was not built for the convenience of merchants, though they certainly benefited. Its primary purpose was to move legions with crushing speed from one trouble spot to another. The genius of the system lay in its ruthless efficiency. Along these straight, durable highways, the Romans established a chain of post stations at calculated intervals, each one a day's march apart. A soldier carrying his heavy pack could march to the next station, rest, resupply, and continue day after day at a pace that no opposing force could match. This network of roads and stations was the empire's circulatory system, and the legions were its lifeblood, pumped to any threatened border with astonishing speed. The Persian Empire had perfected this concept centuries earlier with their royal road. This 2,500-kilometer stone-paved highway featured 111 post stations, where royal messengers on fresh horses could relay information across the entire empire in just 7 days, a feat that would have taken an ordinary traveler 3 months. This was not just about mail, it was about control, allowing the central authority to project its will instantly across a vast and diverse landscape. The logic was clear: the power that moved fastest held the most territory. This ancient military imperative did not fade away with the fall of empires, it simply found new vehicles. Our modern interstate highway systems, like the one initiated in the United States during the 1950s, were explicitly sold to the public as essential for national defense. They were designed to be wide enough to serve as emergency airstrips, and their routes were planned to connect strategic industrial centers and military bases, ensuring the rapid movement of troops and material in a time of crisis. The same logic drives the planning of high-speed rail corridors in Europe and Asia today, where the ability to move large numbers of people or resources quickly remains a cornerstone of national security planning. From the legionary's hobnailed sandal to the tank's steel treads, the most advanced transportation networks have always followed the drumbeat of defense, a relentless rhythm that has shaped our world for thousands of years. The final hidden logic system is perhaps the most profound, for it reveals that our roads are not just paths through space, but pathways through time. The 24th system is cultural memory and historical preservation through route persistence. Many of the ancient roads beneath our modern cities endure not by accident, but because they encode a deep cultural memory, a continuity of place that outlasts empires and technologies. In London, the winding curve of a modern street suddenly makes sense when you realize it follows the exact line of a medieval wall that vanished centuries ago. In Paris, the radial pattern of avenues emanating from the Arc de Triomphe sits atop older paths that once led to village centers long since absorbed by the growing city. These are not mere historical curiosities, they are living archives. The persistence of these ancient street patterns represents layer upon layer of historical meaning and collective memory, a physical palimpsest where every generation writes its story without entirely erasing the one that came before. This principle of inherited paths is a global phenomenon. Across North America, countless modern highways began as Native American trails. These routes, like the famous Mohawk Trail in New England, were not randomly chosen. They represented optimal paths validated by generations, even millennia, of intimate knowledge about the landscape, the seasonal migrations of game, and the safest river crossings. When European settlers arrived, they did not reinvent the wheel. They followed these already perfected routes, paving over the wisdom of the people who knew the land best. The path itself carried a cultural memory so robust that it dictated the form of future infrastructure. Today, this understanding is transforming the field of historic preservation. We are beginning to see that preserving a city's heritage is not just about saving individual landmark buildings. It is about protecting the connective tissue, the ancient street patterns and public pathways that give those buildings their context and meaning. A cathedral standing alone is a monument, but a cathedral reached by the same winding medieval lane that pilgrims have walked for 800 years is a living story. Contemporary preservation efforts now increasingly fight to save the layout itself, recognizing that the route is as culturally valuable as the destination. This reveals the ultimate purpose of this hidden logic. Our transportation infrastructure is a physical manifestation of cultural memory and historical identity. The road you drive on today may very well be the same path that witnessed the footsteps of knights, traders, and pilgrims, a permanent thread weaving the past directly into the fabric of our present. These 24 systems were never meant to operate in isolation. For the ancient planner, a single roadway was a symphony of interconnected functions, a single line on the map that could simultaneously channel divine energy, control a crowd, cool the air, tell time, and carry water. It was a holistic instrument designed to meet a spectrum of human needs, from the spiritual and social to the economic and environmental, all at once. We have spent centuries pulling this symphony apart, separating the roles of engineer, architect, and planner into distinct professions, each with its own narrow focus. The engineer ensures the road does not flood, the architect designs the buildings that line it, and the planner zones the land around it, yet they rarely speak the same language. This fragmentation has left us with streets that are efficient at moving cars but often fail at building community, that manage stormwater but ignore the psychological experience of the pedestrian, that are structurally sound but culturally barren. The ancient logic offers a powerful alternative, a model of integration. Imagine applying this model to a single, struggling city block today. Instead of a plain asphalt road, we could design a street with a porous surface that mimics Roman hydrological principles, naturally filtering rainwater into the ground. Its orientation could follow Greek solar logic, positioning buildings to maximize winter sun and summer shade, drastically cutting energy costs. Its layout could incorporate medieval social nodes with small plazas at intersections that encourage chance encounters among neighbors. And its very path could honor the historical trail that was once there, preserving the cultural memory of the place. This is not a fantasy. It is the reapplication of a proven, multifaceted blueprint. The complex challenges our cities face today, from climate change and social isolation to infrastructure decay, demand solutions that are equally interconnected. We will not solve the problem of urban heat islands with bigger air conditioners alone, but perhaps by reviving the wind-channeling streets of the Medina. We cannot engineer community with wider highways, but we can design for it by rediscovering the social logic of the Greek agora. The wisdom is not lost, it is merely buried, waiting in the patterns of the past for us to recognize its profound and urgent relevance. This ancient, integrated wisdom is the final key to understanding the streets beneath our feet. We have walked through 24 hidden systems, from the sacred geometry of Egypt to the seismic dances of Inca stonework, and a profound truth emerges. These roads were never just about getting from one place to another. They were masterpieces of multi-dimensional engineering, sophisticated technologies designed to organize every facet of human life. They provided meaning through celestial alignment, security through defensive curves, comfort through passive climate control, and connection through social plazas. Each stone was laid with a purpose that reached far beyond the physical journey, addressing our deepest needs for order, safety, belonging, and a place in the cosmos. The fact that we still follow these same patterns, often without knowing why, is the ultimate testament to their power. Our hierarchical road networks, our cul-de-sacs, and our storm drains are living proof of designs so effective they have become invisible, woven into the very DNA of our cities. As we confront the immense challenges of the 21st century, from climate change and overcrowding to social fragmentation, we stand to learn more from these ancient blueprints than from any new technology. They offer us a vision of the city not as a machine for living, but as an ecosystem for human flourishing, where efficiency and meaning are not opposing forces, but two sides of the same street. The next time you walk down a familiar boulevard or turn a corner in your own neighborhood, pause for a moment. Look past the asphalt and the traffic lights. See the sacred pathway, the hidden water channel, the stage for community, the line drawn from the past directly to your feet. You are walking on a map of human ingenuity, a living archive of solutions waiting to be